Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Deviation Games as more news has come out about the layoffs and then some actual developers speaking out as well, plus some rumors as well around the project that they were working on. And I definitely want to talk about this because it seems that there's a lot of stigma around what's happening here. You know, between Pixel Opus closing down and then now with Deviation, some people are questioning what Sony's doing, right? And I do want to dive into that and what's happening there and give you my 2 cents on the whole situation. And before we jump into all of that, if you guys could do me a huge favor, hit the like button, really show your support. It goes a very, very long way. Share the video if you find it informative and subscribe if you're new. Now let's talk about this article that was published by VGC. As they say, several now ex-employees of Deviation have announced their departure on social media. We have Christopher Berryman-Berry, who says, "A bunch of my colleagues and friends were laid off from Deviation Games today." Then we have Mickey G saying, "Today we had a new piece of life experience, being laid off." Then we have Jared B saying, "Unfortunately, I was affected by the layoffs today at Deviation Games. I'm looking for roles in production immediately." So it seems that a lot of people were laid off, and they're saying over 90 people were laid off from Deviation Games, which is a lot. That's a lot of people. And this kind of is one of those situations where it doesn't come as a full-blown shock, right? Like Jason Blundell leaving the studio in September was a pretty peculiar situation as it was, being that he was a co-founder of Deviation Games. And it made me wonder why he left. And I feel like this likely has something to do with the current events that are happening around Deviation Games as well. Now, I couldn't even begin to tell you why Jason Blundell left. And I can't tell you exactly why all these people are being laid off because, well, the truth is we don't know exactly why that is the case. But I do think that it likely has something to do with the game not progressing the way Sony wants, right? Like there are milestone checks for any project, and the expectation is that they reach those milestones as they come around. And they probably don't have the project where the expectation was for it to be. And when that kind of happens, then Sony, being that they're funding them, has to go back and say, okay, well, what can we do about this, right? Is it a project issue? Is the project just not great? Is it a development issue with the developers? Is it like, what is it? What exactly is causing this kind of situation? And I think in this case, the project just may not be what Sony hoped it to be. And I know there's going to be a lot of criticism about this. And maybe what I'm going to say is probably going to rub some people the wrong way. But objectively thinking about, Sony funding this project, and obviously this is speculation, but thinking about Sony funding this project, they have expectations of where this project would be, given free reign for them to create what they want, but still under the impression that they are going to create a good project that Sony can put themselves behind and feel confident about. And I think what's simply happened is that it didn't reach where Sony wanted it to be. And when that happens, Sony can either, have them go back to the drawing board, give them more time, do all types of stuff. But if they've lost complete faith, then the possibility is that they just cancel the game. Now, it's possible that this game has been canceled. It's been rumored that it has been canceled. And given the amount of layoffs there is, I think that very well could be the case. And if that is the case, I wouldn't say that Sony is in the wrong for doing that. And I know, immediately some people are going to be like, oh, you're a fanboy, that's why you're saying this. No, not at all. The reason I'm saying this is I'd rather Sony be like, all right, this game is not meeting the requirements or expectations that we have for something that we're backing. So yeah, scrap it or start over or do something else, right? Because they don't want to release a game that does really poorly and reflects on them poorly as well. Think about it like this. Arcane released Redfall, right? And Arcane is typically known to do some pretty decent games. And they released Redfall, and Redfall was so bad that it really hit Microsoft in such a way that they'll recover from, but at the same time, put their name in the dirt for even longer than they would have otherwise had to face had they just canceled Redfall. If we've got a Redfall situation here, in terms of it not being a good game, in terms of it not being a full fleshed out experience or an enjoyable experience, I 110% stand behind Sony in saying that, hey, you know what? Let's just scrap this project. And if that's the case, it's best for the brand, it's best for the fans, because nothing good is going to come of releasing a project that they don't have faith in, or releasing a project that we're likely not even going to enjoy. Are we just releasing games to release games, or are we releasing games to release quality projects? So I feel like whatever Deviation was working on likely wasn't the game that they were expecting, and that's probably why people got laid off, and that's probably why the game has been canceled. Obviously, that's speculation. We don't know for sure, and that's also a rumor. We don't know for sure that the game has been canceled. But I really feel like, while it's easy to be like, oh, so look at Sony, they're back in studios and they're laying people off and they're canceling projects and they're doing this and that, right? While it's easy to just go off on Sony and kind of throw all these things at them, I think it's also important to kind of look at it from their perspective, where they don't want to put out a project that may not be where it should be, or may not be enjoyable, or may not be to the standards that they have set for their business, right? So they're really doing themselves a favor. They're also doing gamers a favor. Why would you want to go buy a game that you likely won't enjoy, or just doesn't meet the level that we expect with PlayStation exclusives and what they back? So while this may seem like a setback, and seeing it as a like Pixel is closed, they canceled a sci-fi game that was in development for 3 years, which is likely connected to Deviation Games, as somebody was saying. And then on top of that, you know, Deviation Games having layoffs and now rumored cancellation as well. It may seem like doom and gloom, but I really do think it's more about them making sure they're doing quality checks and releasing projects that they fully stand behind. That's ultimately how I feel about it overall, and that's what I think is actually happening behind the scenes. I don't think that they're canceling great games. I don't think that they're laying off people for no good reason. I think that there is purpose behind what they're doing. And obviously, when you look at your portfolio, you got to go back and reassess and see where you're spending money and where you can make cutbacks, or where things don't make sense to keep pushing forward if they're not meeting expectations. At the end of the day, you got to carry your weight. You got to make sure that it's known why you're doing what you're doing. You got to prove your existence, and you have to make sure that whatever projects you're working on, they have a purpose, they have worth, and they are very valuable to pushing the industry forward, or at least creating some excellent games, because there's no point in creating a mediocre project or creating a project that's really not moving the needle for anybody, right? Other than maybe that small percentage of people who are like, hey, I love this game, even though 99% of the people don't like it, right? So I think that that's kind of where they are, and that's me speculating, also based on some comments that are being made. Overall, I think that more news is going to come out about this, and when it does happen, we'll definitely talk about it. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about this. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you didn't enjoy it, hit the dislike button. If you found this informative, please consider sharing this video with a friend. Subscribe if you're new. You can follow me on Twitter. Link will be in the description. I thank you all for watching. Take care.